Right, hi. Yeah, I must say, first of all, thanks to Dave Arcadian. He's moved the 3 seconds to 30 minutes, which is handy. And if you don't know what that's all about, then you'll have to look at some of the earlier posts. I was given a 30-second introduction, and I think after 5 minutes, Dave stopped me. So anyway, I'm going to talk about me. I know myself quite well. And how I got into electronics, how I got into PRES and the ACP and all the other Acorn related things. So it all started off at school. I had two very good teachers, one called Mr. Farrer, geography teacher, and one called Mr. Schofield, the woodworking teacher. And they both encouraged me in their various ways, but the killer was Mr. Farrer took me to one side during a playtime and explained how a thermionic valve worked. Well, that was it. I was basically hooked. And Mr. Schofield was used to help him out in the woodwork class doing other things, because a friend of mine and myself, I was quite good at woodworking those days, and Alan Dalton, and so we'd done all the work that had been planned, and we got to do other things. And one of them was making an instant heat soldering gun for him. I look back now in horror at the handling mains transformers and stripping them down and things like that. Anyway, that got me into electronics. I joined the army at 15, and I was stationed down in Newton Abbot in Devon. Absolutely fantastic place. But I didn't want to, that was Royal Signals. I didn't want to be in the Royal Signals. I wanted to be in the REMI doing electronics. But my interview in Bradford Army Careers Centre was a bit of a disappointment, because they noticed that I couldn't spell. And so I was shuffled from the REMI to the Royal Signals. I eventually got into a dead-end job in the army. They said, you'll be here for forever and a day because we've taken so long to train you. That's another long story, but so I bought myself out, and again wanted to do electronics, but no qualifications in electronics. So my other love at that time, and still is to some extent, was repairing cars. I used to take A-series engines and refurbish them, and for guys on camp. And so when I came out, I did a government training course in car mechanics, and got a job in a garage in Hurstwood in Saltaire. Staveley Garages, who moved down into Shipley into a massive old mill. And again, because I was more interested in electronics and electrics, I ended up doing a lot of off mechanicking work, but mostly I did the electronics side. They bought me a nice piece of kit, a Sun test station to tune cars and things like that. But I still wasn't happy. I still wanted to do electronics. And one day my wife rang me up at work and said, I've got you an interview at a company called Stereo Sound in Brighouse. And I thought, oh, right, okay. So I started brushing up on my hobby electronics and decided to have a quick word with some friends who were a little older and wiser than me. And they gave me some tips on how to go about an interview. Never been interviewed before in my life. So went I went along to this stereo sound in Brighouse and sat down with the technical director, who asked me lots and lots of questions, and eventually shoved a circuit diagram in front of me and said, explain how it works. So I did, to the best of my ability. I got to the end and there was one capacitor that looked familiar in how it was placed, but could not describe what it did. And it was actually a Bootstrap Cam. And anyway, I said, look, sorry. I said, I have no idea what this does. And he looked at me and he says, sorry, he says, I can't give you a job. I'd gone for a technician's job. And he must have seen my face fall through the floor. And he said, oh, no, no, no. He says, no, no. He says, you're miles better than the guys we've got. He says, would you like to run the department? So I thought, oh, crikey, lack of confidence here, which probably followed me all through my life. And so I said, not quite sure I'd like to do that. He said, how about doing it jointly with somebody else? I said, okay, yeah. Anyway, that went well. And I stayed there probably a couple of years until, again, my wife rang me up and said, I've got an interview for a job at Rank Hi-Fi in Appley Bridge in Bradford. So I thought, oh, great, because travelling, probably about 3/4 of an hour travelling there and back on the bus at the time to Brighouse. So Appley Bridge was a lot nearer. So yeah, I went. No, I didn't go for an interview. Nothing happened, and my wife noticed that the job was interviewed again the following week. So she rang them up again, totally unknown to me, and gave them hell over the phone, saying, "You haven't even interviewed my husband." So eventually, I got an interview. Went there. So second interview, and got the job straight away. And in fact, within a couple of weeks, they promoted me to run the test department, which I was based in. So we were basically aligning and fault finding sets off the production line. But I think the reason I got the job was because the first day I got there, I aligned 8 sets. These were Leak 2000 radio amplifiers. And I had a visit from one of the lads further down the line, and he says, I hope you're not going to do any more tomorrow. I looked at him and said, well, why? He says, well, we only do 5 a day. I says, oh, no, no. I says, give me, tomorrow, I says, I'll be able to double what I do. So that didn't go down well with everybody else. But actually, the second day, I managed 20. And of course, all the other guys then had to up their game. So anyway, eventually ran the department, made friends with everybody, and stayed there for 3 or 4 years. Until 1976, when I was in bed with flu. My wife was in maternity hospital, giving birth to our first daughter. And I got a call from a colleague saying that we're all made redundant. So I thought, okay. So I had to get another job, although I'd been offered one, which I took, but then later declined it when I got another job, which was basically manufacturing and testing parts for a company called Acorn Electron in Leeds, who manufactured amateur radio equipment. And eventually we joined the company as a team because I had 2 girls working for me in my back garden in a shed, purpose-built shed. So we went over to Leeds and carried on working there. And from there, I got a job at Philtronic, where I was effectively laying out circuit boards. But that was quite interesting because it was military, well, on the passive military side, so mainly filters. If anybody recognises them, suspended substrate filters, which were developed by the founder, Professor Rhodes, Leeds University. So, so we carried on there, and eventually they were going through hard times, and I could see the writing on the wall, redundancy looming again. So I took the opportunity to leave, and I got some actually redundancy money from it, even though I actually left. So I started, should I say, I carried on a part-time business full-time, which was manufacturing CB products. And then the Electron came along, and I designed first product, which was the ASR, the Advanced Sideways RAM, although it wasn't called the Advanced Sideways RAM until I met John Huddleston. Rang him up one day and had a chat with him, and he agreed to market the products. So the ASR was basically a bit of sideways RAM with a switch on the case where you could switch it between a 16K and an 8K, and it had a write protect switch. Went down to an exhibition in London, first exhibition, and it was well received. Everybody liked it, but nobody bought one. So I came home very despondent, but we'd given away several to reviewers who liked it, so it did quite well. And that was the start of the relationship with PRES. We went on to do lots of other products. I'm going to read from a list, which is probably not complete. So it was the ASR originally, then the ARA1, which was single ROM board, and ARA2, which was a double, and then went on to the ABR, the AP4, the AP34, the AP5, the AP6, the AP7, and of course then we took over the +1s from Acorn. So we did an awful lot of work on the Electron, and I absolutely loved that time. The problem was I spent way too much time doing the job, and well, I thought I was preparing the future for our family, but my family got a little neglected, so that was my bad. Anyway, we eventually fell out over the issue, fell out with PRES. The problem really, John Huddleston wanted to dictate what we made for them. Unfortunately, some of the products that John wanted us to make were quite resource intensive, so we didn't have those resources to hand. And of course, by that time there were 4 of us in the business, and it was very difficult to decide what to make and how realistic it was that we were going to actually make some money out of it and pay our wages. So after a long overnight meeting with them at Leicester Forest East, we decided to part company, which was a little sad. We promised to carry on providing all the products that we were making, and it was only recently I found out that John actually had the AP34 designed or copied by somebody else. I've only ever seen one, and it was on eBay. Couldn't get hold of it, but I mean, I was surprised, but it didn't bother me in the least. I mean, by that time we'd moved on. So, but then what did we do? Well, we did lots of things for other people. We did work for local companies, alarm installation companies. We designed little gadgets for them. We designed things for Ericsson. No, we did some software for Ericsson. We designed something for the Hong Kong stock market channel. And of course, then we got into the Fender Jukebox. I'd already been supplying a company in the name escapes me. Amusement Services, Heckman-Dwight. They were manufacturing beeps that were controlled by master boards. So each unit, the main unit, main controller, and any wall boxes all had a master board in. And of course, masters can take cartridges, and they were using our ABRs to hold all the disk information. I'm trying to keep my eye on time. I'm going to overrun. I'm trying to chuff it along a bit. Anyway, we sold a lot of ABRs to them, and eventually we designed their second jukebox, which is the Fender Jukebox, which is sat by my side. In fact, I've got one of the early ones on the wall as well, which some of you may have seen during my workshop tour. Anyway, we did that. We also did. We met up with Ian Copestake and carried on the Acorn products through Ian, and we did an awful lot of business through Ian. But eventually, my involvement with the company came to an end when my wife at the time decided the grass was greener, and I wasn't paying her enough attention. So we parted company, and I went back to work for Philtronic. And I was there for the rest of my working life. Ended up mostly designing PCBs, but I did all the power supplies for the products, which were transceivers for the backhaul system on the cellular network systems. You'll have to look up. It's basically the information back between each cell and back to the main server. It's quite interesting, but the units were ranging between 5 gig, and eventually we were up at 96 gig. So I was laying out circuits for 96 gig operation, and I was listening to the previous talk on PCB layout, and yeah, I can sympathize with anybody who has trouble with ground loops and signal integrity. Working up at 93 gigs is just something else. It's another experience, and but I also had, as I said, had to design the power supplies for them. So a lot of DC to DC conversions, and one of the major design goals was to meet an MTBF, that's mean time between failure, of 1 million hours. Well, to do that, you need to derate components like you wouldn't believe. And of course, they had to work between -40 and 125 degrees C, which again involves a lot of work calculating out how things are going to behave and how hot they're going to get, and whether you need to have heat sinks on them. And of course, we couldn't have anything mechanical in there. Fans just don't last for 1 million hours. So everything had to be in a box, sealed, and the only heat exchange was through to the outside world via the case. So very careful design work there. So that brings me to what I'm doing now. I retired, crikey, 6 years ago now. I did some work for a company in Norway after I retired, a company called Idexx, who make fingerprint sensors. They're the only company that have a fingerprint sensor on a credit card, and it works, and it's passed all the tests. And I'm quite surprised that they haven't gone further, because one of the ideal things that you want now, if you've got a touch-free, contactless credit card, that you're limited to a certain amount, although I do believe they've extended it for this particular situation. However, it would be the reason it's limited is if you lose your card, anybody could do it. But if you had a fingerprint sensor on there, you could have, you could spend £5,000 upwards as if you've got a contactless, because you'd have to have your fingerprint on the card. But anyway, that's another story. Where were we? Yeah, right. So one of my goals in retirement is to actually recreate all the products that I did in the 80s and 90s and forward, just so people have access to them, because prices, as you know, on eBay are going up and up. And I've got quite a few done. I've got the ABR, the ARA2, the AP6, the AP5, with a lot of help from Ogler. Thank you very, very much. And I'm working on others as we speak. Some of the Archimedes products I'm a little stuck on, because my partner David Prosser, who did most of the work on those, he's not letting information go, so he's got it all on a computer in his loft, and feels reluctant to actually get that information out to me. He's passed on some. He needs chivying along, and I need to, I think, go down and have a chat with him, see if I can't persuade him to actually archive all his products on GitHub or something like that, so we have access to them. So I've got a couple of designs that are almost finished but not working because I don't have the right information. He sent me information on them, but not the current or not the latest information, which is a little sad, but we'll get there eventually. I'm in no rush, and there are other people providing those, especially ENS. Thanks Ian for stepping in and providing lots of Archimedes disk interfaces. So that's about it.
Thanks for sharing that, Dave. That's a great story.
I could have gone on and on and on, but probably 3 days would have been needed, and several glasses of water.
We'll save that for your third introduction.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. That was an interesting insight into your background. So I'm grateful for that.